Alright guys, this video is going to be a sort of intro tutorial to Armored Advance, which is the game I'm developing using the 3D models that I've been making. So the way Armored Advance works is different to a lot of games. It's still a turn-based tabletop strategy game, but instead of having every unit being able to do things at the same time in phases or anything like that, you essentially have an action system. So for instance, the Panzer IV might have 2 actions, and the T-34 would also have 2 actions. So T-34 is on the right, Panzer IV is on the left. And the idea is that they can allocate those actions in really any combination of ways to do different tasks to play the game, and there's going to be like objectives and things like that they have to handle. And most games I've been playing around 8 tanks versus 8 tanks. And the idea is you have an action limit that's less than all the possible actions. So you're left with having to make decisions on which units are doing what. And some units can't do anything, or you might be able to allocate 1 action per unit, but then nothing can do 2 actions. So, but you can distribute it however you want. So in this video, I'm going to be kind of covering the basic actions of the demo game that I've put up on my Patreon, and I'll be sharing links to here, and it's all free. These 2 models are free. The rule set for the demo is free. All you have to do is go to that page and download them. No expectations of like being a member or anything, just enjoy it and let me know what you think. So I'm going to kind of cover the basic actions and how everything works and kind of the design philosophy of those actions and how to read the stat cards and things like that. So this video might be probably not too long because I'm only going to cover a few things rather than the full scope of the game, but hopefully it's enough that you can kind of get a sense of what I'm doing and why I don't upload too often, because making these models takes time. Unfortunately, it'd be nice if I could just like have them, but yeah, they're fun to make, so it's fine. And I'll still do SolidWorks tutorials and things like that intermediately. It's just a little difficult to know what to make a tutorial on sometimes. So yeah, I'm gonna reconfigure this board and then I'll start showing the different types of actions. So I'm gonna start with movement and then go to shooting phases and or not phases, but shooting actions and how that resolves in the game. So yeah. Okay, so the first action I'm going to cover, and sorry if my voice kind of deviates in volume, I'm going to try to stabilize that, but I'm kind of pacing around, or not really pacing, but going back and forth with the camera, which is just fixed, so my voice might be changing volume. I'll make sure that's not too bad. But the first action I'm going to cover is movement. So movement is dictated by, first off, the movement stat of a vehicle, which I'll show the stat cards at the end of the video to kind of give an outline of how to read those, and those are all available and also explained in the rulebook. But the idea is that I have 2 actions. So as a medium vehicle, in the case of the Panzer IV, I can move my movement stat twice, once per action. So the Panzer IV's movement is given by 5 inches. So what I could do is I take a ruler or a tape measure or something. Let's see, 5 inches. So 1 action would be traveling to about here. So traveling 5 inches with the vehicle, that would be 1 action. And as a medium vehicle, it can do that with both actions. And there's kind of a weight system where light vehicles can do the same thing, where they can move their full stat twice. But then as a light vehicle, they can also move an extra 2 inches for free. So they could, even without spending any actions, move 2 inches, which gives them a little bit more mobility. And they're already got better movement stats, like 5 for the Panzer IV, and like a car might have 8. I might incorporate like roads and things like that, which buff that even further. But that's kind of the basic movement. Heavy vehicles are similar, but what essentially happens is they get their first action at their full move stat, and then if they choose to move again, they can only move up to 2 inches. So it kind of limits their mobility and encourages you to kind of move and shoot versus doing double moves, since you get diminishing returns on that. So that's how the movement works. It's pretty straightforward. All vehicles have a movement stat which is dictated in their stat cards, which again I'll show at the end of the video, but pretty simple there. And I'm going to go into shooting next. Okay, so now I'm going to cover a shooting mechanic. So I'm going to have the Panzer IV use its second action in this case because it moved, although I did move it back. It's going to shoot the T-34 now, which is in front of it, the tank on the right. And the idea there is shooting is not meant to require too many dice rolls, at least against tanks. Against infantry, it's a bit more sporadic because, you know, like people have different locations, and you might like shoot a machine gun and only hit one guy, or you might hit 3 or 6 or whatever. So it's kind of, that's a dice roll. But here it's very deterministic for the most part. So the only roll you need to do really in most cases, because in most cases the gun, like the Panzer IV's gun, is much more powerful than the armor on the T-34 frontally. It will pierce it if it hits. So that's where it comes in. You have to hit. And unlike a lot of games where hit rolls are constant, like the accuracy of the vehicle is all that matters, here the range is very important. And I'll have a little table show up for how the ranges work, and that's also in the rule book. But it's pretty straightforward, I think. Essentially, every 6 inches you have to add 1. So in this case, they're really close. So you can see their range is less than 6 inches. So the Panzer IV is going to automatically hit at that range because it's a 1 within 6 inches to hit, which you're never not going to get. Barring some cover or something like that, that applies a modifier, but I haven't implemented that yet. But the idea is, so the Panzer IV is going to hit, it's going to penetrate, so you don't even need to roll in this case. You're close enough that you're just going to hit, penetrate, and the Panzer IV has a damage stat of 10 versus the health of a T-34, which means that the health of the T-34 is going to drop. I believe it's either 16 or 18. I'm going to treat it as 16 just for convenience. But the idea is he has 16, he takes 10 damage, so he has 6 left, and you're going to denote that with a little dice here. My hand is visible. A little dice with a 6 on it, and that's how much health the T-34 has left. So if I were to shoot him again, which I cannot do, you can only shoot with big guns once per turn for a particular vehicle, so you can't use both actions to shoot unless you have a keyword that allows it, which vehicles with smaller guns do have, so they can do less damage, but they can fire twice, so you can kind of distribute your damage over 2 shots. A little bit of a kind of cost benefit. Usually have less penetration, so it's not as reliable. But in this case, the T-34 has 6 health left, and if I were to shoot the T-34 again in the next turn, and the T-34 somehow didn't choose to retaliate, then I have killed it. And you know, in real life, tanks don't just vanish when they're killed. They might blow up, but there's still going to be something there, unless it's War Thunder and you just disappear completely because ammo wrecks. But the idea is your tank is still there, so the T-34 has to be denoted as dead. And I have these laser cut wood tokens to do that currently, but I'm going to make 3D print files for basically an equivalent thing, same size, same roll, but you just put that somewhere on the vehicle. So I'll just show you what this looks like. It's a little skull. It doesn't really want to focus, but it's a little skull. You just put that on the vehicle to denote that it's dead, very prominent. You know that vehicle's gone. It's just basically terrain or cover now. And the way cover works is, like, obviously, if you're going to shoot somebody, you have to see them. So, say the T-34 was behind this building, like so, which is also laser cut and kind of ugly because I haven't fully processed it yet. But you can't shoot the T-34 because it's behind the building. And there's a lot of other things, like I might have some sandbags, which might reduce your hit chance. So maybe I'll need a 2 because he's behind sandbags, which reduces his profile or something like that. Or you might have some solid cover, like this rock wall, that you might be able to shoot through it, but it's going to add effective armor to the T-34. So it might go from 12 to 14, at which point it's closer to the Panzer IV's penetration, and the Panzer IV might struggle to kill it. In this case, it wouldn't, because it's 15 versus 14, so it would still be able to handle it, but it's getting closer. And the other mechanic with shooting is for every foot you are away, rounded down. So I'm within a foot, I have my full penetration stat. If I were 2 feet away, or over 1 foot, between 1 and 2 feet, I actually subtract 1 from my penetration. So you take your distance in feet, or 12 inches increments, and you divide it by, or you don't even divide it, you round it down. So like 3 feet and 6 inches is 3, and you subtract that from your penetration, so you lose power at range. So something like a T-34 might be at a few feet behind a wall, the Panzer IV can't hurt it. And when you're behind a wall, if you're within a certain distance, I'm thinking 3 inches of the wall, it doesn't actually affect your shooting. So the T-34 can shoot the Panzer IV without penalty, but the Panzer IV has a penalty against the T-34, just since the T-34 is within 3 inches, so he can shoot over it, and he also gets cover from it. The Panzer IV is not within 3 inches, so he can't shoot over it, and he doesn't get cover from it. So, just an example, let's say, I can't really do it because they're in the camera's view, and I don't really want to zoom out or anything, but say the Panzer IV was a foot or maybe 9 inches away from the T-34. That's more than 6, but within 12, which is another 6 increment, and I'll have a table for this. But then he'd need a 2 to hit, so there's a chance that it's likely he'll hit, but there's a chance that he won't. And at 2 feet, for instance, or 2 feet 3 inches, he's going to need, I believe, a 4 off the top of my head in order to hit, which means that he has a 50% chance of hitting, and his penetration's also gone down by 3, so now it's 12, which is equivalent to the T-34's armor, which means that it's a 50-50 of if the round even pierces. So the way penetration works is if your gun has more power, or penetration, which is the penetration power in centimeters, than the target, then you automatically penetrate. If it's equal, it's a 50-50, barring some special edge cases, which are keywords, and they're just outlined in the full rulebook, not the demo rulebook. But and then if you have less penetration than they have armor, you're never going to go through. So it's pretty binary for the most part. You're either going to go through or you're not. You're not going to like get random like, oh, I have a 90% chance of hurting you, but I got unlucky. That's not going to happen. It's more reliable. The idea is there's a lot more determinism to the game, and it's more decision making than it is dice rolling. So that's how shooting works. I think pretty straightforward. After the Panzer IV's done his 2 actions or 1 action, depending on how you set up the game rule, and usually you'd have multiple tanks, so you might have like 5 tanks and 8 actions between them, so you have 10 potential things to do, but you can only do 8 of them. And the idea is after the Panzer IV executes his actions and his turn's over, the T-34 gets his 2 actions, so he might shoot the Panzer IV and run away, or run away and then run further. But he makes those decisions on what he wants to do, and in this case the Panzer IV has the advantage because he already did damage, so in the next turn the Panzer IV is going to kill the T-34 unless he runs, but the T-34 can't kill the Panzer IV, so it would be beneficial for him to run and try to re-engage from more distance or something where he has a better advantage. Okay, so this could be an example, for instance, of a small force for a team. So here you have 6 vehicles, that's 12 potential actions, but you might play with 8, 10, which means that like I can move, if I had 8, I can move 4 of the vehicles twice, but then the other 2 vehicles couldn't do anything, or any permutation of those. So you could move everything once, and then you have 2 actions left, and you could do 2 more actions with something else, or 2 other things really, because they're capped. But you can kind of distribute that however you like. So there's the dice still there, I just realized, but that's fine. So the idea is you create forces, so you could have like your Soviet force and your German force, or really I have a lot of tanks. I might show a picture, but I have like 70 models on my shelf right now for like just different factions and things like that. But the idea is that you spend requisition points, which is another characteristic of the vehicle. So there's health, or movement, health, action limit, and requisition. And then there's some stats for the guns and armor. But so you total your requisition, so it's about equal between both forces. And what you could do is you could have one force that's like a King Tiger, and it costs as much as like 6 other tanks, and they could fight each other. The King Tiger would probably lose, because even if he has an 8 action limit, he can only do 2 actions as the King Tiger, so he'd be outmaneuvered really easily, which is part of the decision making, right? You don't want to like invest too heavily on one unit, but sometimes in bigger games that one unit could be really useful. But anyway, you spend those requisition to create forces that are roughly equal, and that's kind of being tuned in terms of balance and things like that, and then you play out the game. So here I've got Panzer II, some Panzer IVs, a Panzer III, and some armored cars. The armored car on the bottom left, the 232, is actually available on my Cults page. Everything else is waiting for kind of a bulk release, minus the Panzer IV. That's actually an F1, or an F2, the long-barreled one. And I have a G available. And the G and T-34 shown earlier are both available freely on my Patreon, as I said. So feel free to pick those up and try the game out. You can do several T-34s versus several Panzer IVs. I have them with slightly different rules than the full game, just to make them pretty balanced. T-34 and Panzer IV will penetrate each other at the same ranges. They have the same mobilities, same health. They're pretty equivalent. In fact, they're exactly equivalent against each other. But then you could do an inverse where a T-34 versus a T-34, and suddenly armor's relevant because they can't actually frontally penetrate each other, so it becomes a navigation game. Or you can do a combination of Panzer IVs and T-34s versus Panzer IVs and T-34s. There's a lot you can do. It's not really bound by anything because it's a tabletop game. It doesn't have to be historically accurate. That's kind of my aim, but it's not mandatory. And yeah, so here there's some diversity of like classes. You've got some light vehicles, some medium vehicles, and I'll just grab a heavy vehicle just for reference. So I've got the Tiger, and I'll just replace this guy with the Tiger. So I might spend more requisition to have this as my force, and suddenly I've got a Tiger tank with everything. Not painted to the same standard that I was doing the other ones, but that doesn't matter. It's just a game. And yeah, so you create your force, you play against the other players. There's some objective systems I've implemented. The full game has an infantry mechanic and kind of objectives, like capture points and things like that, and you're trying to hold more than the opposition. So there's some flavor added to it in order to kind of force decisions versus just killing everything. For now, this is kind of the demo is kind of just to get the rules, the very basic rules, and it's kind of to get some feedback on it. So yeah. I think that's about it. I'm going to go to the stat cards now. I'm just going to outline what everything means. But that's how that works. And I have I'll just say it now because I might forget later. So I have the Patreon that I've mentioned a few times. Again, feel free to download the models and leave. I don't want to force anybody to subscribe, although I will say that I have about a dozen files up. And if you do subscribe, you can get all of them for free. Well, I say free. The subscription is $10, I think. But yeah, if you want to support me, I appreciate it, but no pressure. And I also have a Discord server, which I'll link in the description. It's also linked to my channel page, and it's dedicated to developing this game. I had a different one, so some of you might have joined that. It kind of died, so I have a new one, so feel free to join that one. It's just rules discussion and early access to the full rules, sometimes free models depending on feedback. So like if you're contributing and helping me develop this game, I'll send you free models. I don't have a problem with that. I charge for them because SolidWorks isn't free, but I just enjoy making them, and I want to create something cool for everybody. So yeah, I'll go to the stat cards, but thanks for watching so far. Alrighty, so I just recorded the tabletop portion of the video, so now here's a probably very different change in audio quality. But this is what a stat card for the game looks like. So actually, for Germany alone, I have 41 unique units currently. And then I have UK, Soviets, Americans, and some French stuff, and Italian stuff, because I'm doing LL Domain, so you can't really do that without Italian stuff. So this is one of the demo units. So it's slightly different rules than the actual live version, and apparently we have 18 health versus 16, but 16 was good for the example, so that's fine. So here, the way you read these stats, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but you've got your the vehicle name, silhouette, country, got the flag. I tried not to be too controversial with the flag I chose, but it's kind of just some flavor. What the vehicle is, so the Panzer IV, this is just labeled as a Panzer IV. It's in the on the video I showed a Panzer IV F2, but this is a G. Doesn't really matter. They have the same guns and they're practically identical minus the armor. So this is the stat card for the game. In terms of what these mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. You have the health pool. So when you take damage, you subtract from this, and you denote it with the dice, as I showed. You have your movement right here, so 5 inches. So the tank, if it spends both actions, can move up to 10 inches, since it's medium, which is outlined down here in the keyword section. And that's the only keyword it has. I have a whole list of keywords in the full version, but I wanted to simplify the demo. You have the action limit. So the Panzer IV can do up to 2 things. So it could shoot once, move once, or move twice in the demo. Or it can do one of those things and give the other actions to some other unit to do up to its 2. And then you have the requisition. So how many points it costs to field a single Panzer IV. And in the demo, T-34s and Panzer IVs cost the same. So it's kind of like tank number versus tank number. But say you were to have like some lighter vehicles, they might cost different amounts. So you might have a Panzer III that costs 100. So
it's kind of like, what do I want to bring? Do I want to bring more smaller units, as I mentioned, or do I want to bring like one big unit, or how do I want to allocate those points? For protection, you have these values. So the 8 represents 8 centimeters or 80 millimeters. These are also calculated to take into account angle and deflection chance, which is all like kind of canned. So the T-34 has 45 millimeter thick armor, but the value here is 12, I believe, because the angle and the deflection chance kind of inflates that. And the deflection chances were admittedly kind of normalized to the American 76, so some rounds might be better against armor in real life, but in the game they're not. It's all kind of a balancing act, but I don't want to add too much complexity. Side armor is 30 millimeters or 3 centimeters. Rear is 3 centimeters or 30 millimeters. And then for the gun, you've got this lower column or I guess row, is the anti-infantry attacks, which technically you have a machine gun, but there's no infantry in the demo, so it doesn't matter, so I did not applicable. But for the main armament, you've got the 75 centimeter, or 7.5 centimeter, I should say, L43 75 millimeter gun. Mentions twice, I guess. Then you've got these two numbers. So you've got the penetration in centimeters, so 150 millimeters or 15 centimeters, which I guess is kind of weird having metric and imperial kind of mixed. The rationale is that metric, doing centimeters is way more or less discrete than doing inches, right? Like if I do inches, like a 3-inch plate is about 76 millimeters, and you have 3 numbers there instead of 8. And then you've got your damage, which in this case is 10. So you've got 15 power, 10 damage. As I said, power goes down by 1 for every foot you're shooting. Damage is constant. No like, oh, I shot you with my massive gun and did 2 damage or anything like that. So that's how that works. And I'll pull up a live. So I've got some anti-tank guns, artillery, a lot of different stuff. You can see, I'm just kind of jumping through it. Yeah, I have a Porsche Tiger. Experimental. It's kind of there just because I thought it would be fun to model and figured might as well make rules for it. But like say the Tiger, it's got that heavy keyword. I won't go into this because it's not in the demo, but it's got the heavy keyword, so it's got 5 inches movement, can move 5 on the first action, and it can only move 2 on the second action, so 7 total. It's got way more health than a Panzer IV, but it's also more expensive. It's got better armor, again, more expensive, and it's got a better gun, but again, more expensive. And this is what the anti-infantry looks like. So you've got like a machine gun, you've got anti-infantry, that's what the AI stands for, and then you've got D3, which is how many troops you kill. So you might kill between 1 and 3 people by shooting a machine gun at an infantry group. And the infantry groups come in groups of 6, that way they're easily marketed by dice. So like here, I might have 6 people, I shoot them, I roll a 2, or I guess I roll a 4, which in a D3 is equivalent to a 2. That's just some dice stuff, I won't go into that. But, so now there's 4 people left in that squad. So that's kind of how that works. I'm taking out the years, because it's kind of annoying, but yeah, that's how the game works. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I realize it was a little long, so if you made it this far, I really appreciate it. And again, consider joining the Discord, consider downloading the files on Patreon, and trying the game out for yourself, and let me know what you think. So yeah, have a great day.